Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm here in my layout room, standing in my preferred spot, which is where I can see most of the layout, both on the upper level and on the lower level, and also the wings, and also right behind me for the rest of the layout. Now the reason why I planned the layout this way was because I wanted to be able to control everything from one place. In fact, that's why I put my two screens here with all of my block detection and any kind of controlling that I need for the most part, so that I could just, well, since I knew I was going to be alone most of the time and not running with other people, I wanted to have that option of controlling that. So as you can see, the block detection is working nicely. I have a few little kinks on this upper level that I still have to fix, but the lower level is set pretty much. And just to give you an idea, if you haven't been following my videos, this is the upper level, which is kind of like a dog bone, but it's, you know, obviously bent here. And this is, the lower level is more like a pretzel, where it overlaps around itself, but also has a short line that kicks out over here, and also at the Y it kicks out over here, and that's also acting as the reversing sections for both sides. So I'm going to take you back to the layout here. The idea today was to take you around and just show you general updates and general things that I've been doing just to finish up the layout. I'm not done by any means, but I wanted to just give you an update of what's going on. So I guess we'll start here. We'll follow this coal train around the peninsula. The peninsula was built with this big mountain acting as like a seam block, so that if you're standing on this end, you're kind of blocked, and you can't see the rest of the, you know, the layout really. I don't like to see the train fully turn for the most part, because I feel like it's a little unrealistic that the train would do that for no reason at all. Normally trains go from one place to another, so I figured, you know, if I block my line of sight here, especially if I'm standing here, which is more common, it just looks like it's coming around the bend here, but you can't tell that it's actually, you know, making the full turn onto the other side of the peninsula. So on this side of the peninsula, let me just show you a long shot here. The idea here was that it would be a very detached area where you're kind of like in the middle of nowhere, to give that sense of like distance. So what I did is I basically created a lot of just open land. Not, you know, I didn't want a lot of like structures and things here. I created a double creek or river type thing here, which I'm very happy with the way that came out. Water's a little dusty, pardon me. And I also created a little bit of abandonment. So this is an abandoned house here. And then there's an abandoned spur here. At some point it was connected to this main line, but they cut it off to modernize it. And there's an abandoned little loading platform here that would have had a road that came out, you know, just continued this way. So that's basically this side of the wing, this side of the peninsula. And it's also a double main line all the way through until you get to this point right here, where it merges into a single main line. And then as it comes around, it merges once again with what I consider the short line, this one here, which is also the reverse line, so that I can get through the tunnel. And in other videos I've explained that the reason I did that was because I wanted a little bit more interaction with the trains, so that when you're exiting or entering the double mains and or the short line, you have to have some interaction with the dispatcher. So one train's got to stop and another one's got to go. So, you know, I just wanted to make it a little bit more interesting for myself. I know that it would have been easier to just continue the double main all the way through. This way I wouldn't have to pay attention to any trains going through and risk a crash. But I wanted a little bit of a challenge, so that's why I did that. And I'm happy with the results. Okay, so before we let this side go, I wanted to also show you, this is the lumber facility, which I have plenty of videos explaining how this works, and also how all the turnouts are controlled through a remote system here with a control panel that automatically hides so that you don't knock into it as you're walking around the layout if you're not using it. So since the facility is not always switched, I figured I'd put all these controls out of the way by connecting it to a little bit of a panel that goes away. So that's that. Now I'm going to take you around to the rest of this side. As we finish the peninsula, I guess, segment, what we have here is a semi-finished port scene or harbor scene, and I'm very happy with how all this is coming out, especially after I added the background buildings, which I made out of those paper kind of like photo cutouts that are just basically glued on to either the backdrop, or they're glued to a little piece of wood or something that brings the buildings forward a little bit. And I'm not done doing it yet. As you can see here, I did put that on like a hardboard, and I push it forward with a piece of wood so that it creates a little bit of a 3D effect. And then I did a lot of masking with trees and, you know, towers and things like that. And I also included structures, like actual kits, so that it makes it look like the other ones are also kits or, you know, buildings. So as here comes the coal train again, as it comes around the bend here, past my tank car train. This warehouse or transfer building I scratch built, and it does have an interior that I made other videos about, but I'm nowhere near complete. You know, nowhere near complete with that. So that's another, you know, a few hours or so of work that I have to invest in that. The concept of this pier or harbor was that it was supposed to be used for several purposes. This pocket here is for oil. So crude oil comes in. The cranes here, which I built, have pumps that pull in or push in the oil from the boat, or vice versa. And then it all gets stored into these tanks or into those tanks over there. This would be either a pump house or some kind of building that is, you know, is controlling all the inner workings of, you know, the pipes and stuff. And obviously, you know, I still have to add a lot more pipe work and stuff to show that it's connected somehow. But then the other purpose of this is to store tank cars here so that they can be loaded from these holding tanks or unloaded, either way. And then the other purpose of this harbor is to bring in what I use to get all the trains from the lower level to the upper level. And what I use is a scratch-built ferry system, which is necessary to, you know, to make sure that I can get enough trains or enough cars into the system and bring them up to the next level. I looked for kits and other barges and things that were out there. Not a lot. I think it was only like 2 that I found, and they were impossible to find. or purchased because they were not available. So I just made my own, and I made it really big, which is this ship here. It's a double decker, so 4 tracks on top and exactly the same on the bottom. And this boat is actually a real boat that exists. I tried to copy it as much as possible. You know, it's not a very realistic or very prototypical ship, but you know, it serves its purpose. This was like one of my first projects, and I think it looks nice. So that ship actually goes up and down. I don't have it connected right now, but it goes up and down through a platform, which you might be able to see if I get real close here, right here. And that platform comes up through the upper level, picks the ship up, and then there's pegs that are supporting the ship that retract, and then the ship can come down and land right there in front of the apron, which is obviously what is used to unload the cars. Or load the cars. Those aprons, both this one and this one, which is not finished obviously, are both motorized. That's what the motor is right here. And they do go up and down very slowly, which I love because it makes things look very realistic. And so that's basically what this harbor is all about. The only other thing is that I have some storage tracks and some transfer tracks here as well, so that in case there's loads that need to be, you know, temporarily placed there, it can be done. Or if in the future there's some kind of a crane system that I add here, you know, any other ship that would pull into this area would be able to load and unload from the train cars. All right, so that's this corner. Now I'm gonna follow once again the coal train here around to the other side. So I can show you the other side of the peninsula. And as we go into the other side, obviously the tunnel entrance is here. What I like again about this scene is that you don't really see this wing until you pop out here. And then I love how it opens up right over the mountain as it crests, and you kind of see it over, it kind of like falls into like this big town scene, which is what I was going for, and I like the way that came out. Also, this is where the main line opens up once again to the double main line. So again, the dispatcher would have to decide what train has priority to get through that mountain. So just a quick overview here. This is split into basically 2 parts. There's an industry here, which is a paint facility, paint factory. And this building belongs to the factory, and I made this road into kind of like going between the factory because I always liked the way that looked when I saw it, you know, several times, you know, in real life. But the other thing is that I like that it looks like it started to expand. So it started with this building, then it opened up, then they added this one, then they, you know, added that one. So it expanded so much that they had to go past the road and buy this territory out. At least that's what I'm imagining. But you know, I think it came out really nice. It takes 4 separate spurs here. It has 4 separate spurs here. So you know, one goes into the building, one goes next to the building here for whatever it needs to drop off, and then same thing here, one there, and then this one's for tank cars, for any kind of like latex or oils or anything they would use to make paint. These gates that I have here with the fencing actually open up with a manual system, which I've shown in other videos. I just got to finish the fencing from here all the way around. So that's that. The road continues, and then it gets into like the town, which is the next part of this wing. There's a little auto service place here, which I obviously have to detail more. There's a big parking lot for the train station for the commuters, and I know some of my friends always make fun of me because I don't run commuter trains. I don't run passenger trains, but I might at some point. But either way, freight trains go past stations also, so there you go. So yeah, I made this lot look a little bit beat up with the potholes and, you know, other things like that. And then this back road, it would be like the main road of a typical, you know, small town. They all seem to have the same setup, with the parking spots, you know, at an angle like that. The little shops, not a lot. Everything's 2 stories or 3, and that's it. Nothing higher than that. And then obviously I got to add more buildings and things here. Finish the backdrop, and that hill for the cars takes you over, either, you know, continues to the other side, or it takes you over to this side of the town for access to the people that live on this side. That's why there's a house there. And then obviously this track crosses over also, but if you don't want to wait for the long unit trains that interrupt for long periods of time, you can take the bridge. Now the reason why this gate is down is because the little wire that brings it up and down snapped. So that should be in the up position. It didn't quite hold up, so it snapped. I might get slightly thicker wire so that it doesn't do that in the future. But it's had its share of ups and downs, so I'm glad it lasted that long. So let me continue here, double main line. The inside line, this one here, continues to what would be the lower part of the pretzel. And then the outside also continues, but it's got the option of going into the Y, which is this area here. The Y connects to this point right there. And obviously this is the other part of the Y, which connects right at the opening, right at the opening of the tunnel. Now, what I tried to do here was create a scrap yard, a scrap metal facility. It was like a recycling facility. This is like one of the newest things I'm working on, so there's a lot of things that will not stay this way here. But I got the main structure, which is the screen building, in place, along with, I made some scrap piles, which I thought came out real nice. And a scrap load that's actually, you can pull it out with a magnet right out of the car. So in case you want to show, you know, that it's being loaded or unloaded. And there's some empties there. And the track you see behind the building here, kind of hiding, could be used for 2 things. It could either be used to load or unload back in this area here, or it can be used as the yard lead, which is what its main purpose is. So if the yard lead's not being used, they can temporarily, you know, switch here by using the lead. And then obviously you need an access road, which takes you to the facility. I do have a potential weight scale here for the trucks. That's where they would weigh and then dump their material, and obviously the office would be right there, and that's where you would get your money for the scrap metal. These cement barriers are made from windshield wiper blades. The tippy top of them you can separate that and then just paint them and cut them. And I think they look pretty realistic. I might even weather them a little bit with like a little, you know, a little dirt and whatever might kick up. This I'm trying to figure out what to do. I do want some kind of like a conveyor belt system that, you know, brings it to another part of the facility, and then here would be, you know, either another building for separating or crushing or whatever they do with the metal. And I have no idea what I'm going to do there yet. That's why I have these like weird pipes and things. I'm just trying to get an idea of what might work. But obviously I need some kind of access road for that also, so I might just fork it from here and take it into that. I'm not sure. Alright, so that's that. Obviously the double mains that came from the other side spit out here. And as they come around, I love this soft curve here. It makes for really good footage when you're videotaping here or when you're just shooting photos, especially from down here. But the other thing is I have to finish the backdrop. This is a photo backdrop that's going to be reversed. In other words, the way it was printed out, I'm going to reverse the whole thing so it looks like that's connected, and then it's going to continue all the way to there, and then, you know, I'll probably put some kind of a mountain or something on top of the portal there to mask the end of the backdrop. But it's getting there. Coming around here, I'm gonna go down the main line and then come back around for the yard. The double main line hooks on this corner here. I've always thought, you know, the lines of this room are very difficult to work with because there's a lot of ins and outs, you know, just because of the way the house is dormered. So, you know, ideally you would want like very flat walls or very round backdrops like I did back there, but this just some things I couldn't get around this. This is just a corner, and if I bent it, it would have basically eliminated this whole back corner here. So I wanted to use that for a facility. So I just went and wrapped the backdrop around that corner. So while we have the coal train here, might as well follow it along. The double main comes around, and again the inside main has access to the facility here, which is supposed to be like a very small scale brewery, but they do need to receive hoppers and box cars to, you know, to bottle up the orders and things like that and ship them, or whatever else they might need to receive in a box car. But generally speaking, a box car, a hopper, or even a tank car might be something you would see in this facility here. And again, the spur is connected to the inside track, not the one that the coal train is in, which is the outside. So as the coal train makes its way down, this is about a 2% grade here, but I did flatten it out here in the middle slightly. I flattened it out so that in case the train's climbing and it needs to get its grip again, that's a perfect way to do that. But just give it a nice long. The flat section goes basically from here to there, so it's got plenty of time to kind of pull the train up again and gain its traction. Not that I've had any problems with traction, but that was the concept originally, and so I left it like that. Now as we come around here, this corner is just a quiet neighborhood. You know, it's like the houses that are by the tracks, and there's a little road in the back that is freshly paved. That's why it's so nice and crisp. And this guy's property is very close to the track, so he probably feels his bed rumbling at night as the coal train comes by. And then this guy's got a slightly better situation, but still close to the tracks. But again, great little spot for photos and for video right here. It gives it a real big, deep feeling, you know, back there. And the same thing is going to be happening here, where the backdrop's going to get reversed and then continue through until it reaches basically this area here. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be this building I'm going to extend right to the backdrop because I want this to be a very large facility, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But let me go back and show you what the yard is all about. What's happening with the yard. So this is the yard all the way through here. I wanted to always build a big yard that's very functional, and that, you know, even though it might not be used 100%, meaning, you know, every track is being used at all times, and, you know, the ladder doesn't have, like, you know, full strings of rolling stock. I did plan on building very large trains, you know, between 50 and 75 cars. So right now that coal train is about, I would say, 47 cars, close to 50. So if I did want to pull that train in here, I would need some kind of arrival departure tracks that were long enough, and also some kind of ladder tracks that were long enough to switch all that stuff out and categorize them. I know a coal train or a unit train doesn't need to be categorized. It goes from one point to the next. But I could have very long manifest trains if I wanted to. So here's how it works. The two tracks that you see here, meaning the ladder track and the one right next to it, which is basically outlined where the light posts are. That's what outlines the arrival departure tracks. They go all the way around and then hook in the back here. Now the reason why I did that, well, there's two reasons. The reason why I bent them like this was because that gets me a lot more storage for a long train. It gets me a lot more space to pull in a very long train there. And also because in order to get the tracks of the ladder to line up this way, I had to obviously put this at an angle. Otherwise, if I put, the arrival departure track straight, all these tracks would have been shooting out that way. Or I would have had to bend them, and then I think that looks kind of weird when you bend the yard ladder like that. So this gives me nice pin straight ladder tracks, which I absolutely love how that looks. I just love seeing, from an overview here, long stretches. There's my passenger cars that I might be using later on. And I just, I wanted them to, I just wanted to have a lot of options here. Then, let me just back up a little bit. This track that these locomotives are on right now, this is the shorter of the 3 arrival departure tracks. So if those are being occupied, either because there's a train, trying to shove back into the ladder, or because there's another train on the other side waiting, this one can be used. And it's also acting as a siding, or kind of like a runaround if you need to basically get out of the way if there's another train running on this short line here. So the road you see in the middle here is the access road for the crew. And it's just a dead-end road. It just continues through so that anybody that has to get to this area here, or to the engine facility, can just get dropped off here, and then they can walk across or whatever needs to happen. But I didn't want to. Originally, I was going to cut this in now here and connect it here, but it's that would look a little bit forced. That it just shoots out. The road shoots out into like a fueling track. It's just kind of weird. So, speaking of fueling tracks, these two tracks right here are these two are the fueling tracks that I have in place. And I made them long on purpose because I wanted to have long consists able to pull in. This way I don't have to break them down and just pull in, and they could do whatever, refuel or sand or whatever they need to do. These towers I might spread out more so that, there's access to a tower toward the front here, and then access toward the back there. And then I'll have pumps kind of like, laid out all the way until about here. So it'll be pump, or something like that. And this, this is not really supposed to be here, but I'm using it temporarily for, just to show some kind of like, fueling facility. It looks pretty good. This building here is your engine facility. So this is where they repair engines and things like that. And yes, I know it's not, everybody knows this kit. Everybody has this building somewhere in their layout. I know it's not supposed to be the engine facility, but the engine facility, first of all, I didn't have that in my old layout. I already had this. So I wasn't about to buy another one. And I didn't have room for a car facility and an engine facility because I was more interested in having tracks that I could function with rather than tracks that I'm going to be switching broken cars out of. So that's why I went with this. And the other engine facility that is offered by Walters has like a little bit of a tail to it, and I just didn't have room. This would have been too forced in there, so it's already tight enough with the road, coming through the back here. But I like the way that looks there, and that's what I'm going with. So that accepts 3 tracks, obviously, for the facility, and then the 4 tracks that you see here are basically engine locomotive parking. So any kind of constants or anything that are being built, or trains that are not being used, can rest, so to speak, there while they're waiting for their next trip. The road, the access road, is a road that wraps around the entire yard. So you can see it continues all the way through, and it cuts across right here, which is not ideal, but at least it's enough to get a long train. The train needs to get split here, so to allow the cars to go through. That's not a big deal. And obviously it comes around, and this building here is what would be the yard office, and then this is the yard parking, and that's the main entrance for the yard. They're still working things out. There's like, little pipes and things that I know where I'm going to put them. And the only thing was that when I looked at this, I said, well, what happens if, this is the yard office, what happens if you have to get all the way over there in the morning to go work? Well, that's why I built the access road. And also I wanted to build kind of like a satellite building for the office right here. And no, this is not going to be the structure that I'm going to be using, but this is supposed to be another mini office for the people that are working on this side of the yard. They can just park here or whatever. They can just access this building. Those tanks are not going to be there also. So that's that. The only other building I didn't show you was this one here, which is the RIP, the repair and place track. And that's for any damaged cars or anything that needs to be repaired. So that spur is right here. And it's got a second spur here. One is for cabooses. And it holds about 5 cabooses there. The other one here is the actual repair and place spur. And I made this a little bit long on purpose because you can probably get a few cars in there in case they're not ready to be pushed into the building. I figure the less delicate, I guess, repairs can be done outside, and that's where this outside track is. And then the more delicate stuff can be done inside the building. So that door opens automatically. Let's see if I can just hook it up real quick. And there's a servo inside that allows me to automatically lift it and close it. So that's kind of cool. Very simple concept, but it was a pain in the butt to put together because I scratch built that whole system. There was a lot of testing and a lot of going back and forth, but at the end it came out nice. And the cool thing is that I can control the speed completely. I can go up and down as fast as I want and at any point. So that's that. And it cost me about $3 to make that, or maybe a little more, like $5 to make that. All right, this building is a building. I have no idea. There's going to be some storage, like, I don't know, tools, parts, whatever there. But I just left it there because it looked pretty good. So that's this wing. That's this entire wing here. And that leads us over to what I call the industrial area. So as the coal train exits here. Oh, and by the way, notice that the coal train is just continuously running, and I haven't really had to pay attention to it. I did that on purpose because if I am running some kind of train that's going to be switching at different facilities, I like just having trains running at the same time, and the other one's the one that I'm really in control of. And obviously this train will get priority to the points where we're sharing main lines. So again, because I'm by myself a lot, that makes it a little bit more interesting for me. So this is the industrial area. And the industrial area was designed because I had this weird pocket here in my layout room, which it was impossible to do anything that would continuously go through there. Meaning, if I had the mains go in there for no reason at all. It would be a very tight turn to get out of there and continue on. So I did not want to do anything that required that kind of a layout plan. So I figured, what if I just had some kind of like little switching puzzle inside of this pocket where you had many industries that you can serve with a little switcher engine, which is what I've been using. So now I can bring the trains in. I could either just leave them on the main line or bring in a few cars here and then exit again. And then the switcher engine can come in and start, switching out all of the tracks and all the facilities. So just to show you kind of like how I built it, this track, which is the one I was just describing, also acts as the track that goes into that facility there, which is the one I was telling you about that has to be extended at some point. And that facility is controlled by two things. And first of all, there's a switch that opens up the gate automatically. This is not using the same concept as the other building that I showed you before. This is actually a servo that's spinning continuously. I had to modify the servo to let it spin non-stop instead of having like an endpoint where it has to return again. And then it's got some Lego gear reducer systems in place behind there that allow the door to go very slowly up and down. And then it goes into the wall where the track continues all the way inside the wall to the end of this wall here. So you can get a massive, like 14, 15 cars in there. And I would like to make it some kind of like a steel coil delivery where maybe they're making cars or they're making some kind of like, big metal productions. So that's the first system that I wanted to show you. The second system is that I don't know where the end of this track is because I can't see it since it's in the wall. So this little light here through an Arduino controller tells me when I hit the end of the track. So there's a little infrared sensor at the end of the track that when it's interrupted by the train cars coming in, it turns red. So I made this look like a little light, a little light stack, and you can see the red light's on top, but it's not on right now because it's not being interrupted. Now there are some cars in there, but it's not deep enough to trigger that. So that's how I know I still have room to put more cars in if I need to. So let me just close this gate here, this door. This building was scratch built, and I did little things like little water meters and things there, scratch built. Not realistic 100%, but it looks pretty close when you look at it from far away. It looks like there's something there that's important. Little AC unit on top. I still have a lot of work to do. And also lights are hooked up. Looks very nice at night. And then I put some gutters and things to make it look more realistic. And I just got to glue this back in because it's popping off. That's the first industry. The second industry, which is the largest industry, is the paper company. Everybody knows this building. I forget what it's called, but it's the paper company that everybody buys. And I used... I kind of modified it a little bit. I mean, the main building is pretty much the same as what is required from the kit instructions, but I left the back panel and the side panel off because I was able to build another building, which is this one back here, from those panels. So here's the side panel and here's the back panel, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. And it gave me a whole other structure, a tremendous one, and I didn't have to go out and spend another, whatever, $50 or whatever this thing costs. So I have tracks that go either in the facility or next to the facility. And then these are supposed to be the tracks that unload the wood chips. So you could either, go through here and unload there right from the side, or some of my wood chip cars have a dumping, like a self-dumping system, like the ones that are in there now. So I did build a pit under those tracks so that they would dump and then get pushed into, you can't really see it right now, but there's like a holding tank down there, which would then spit or bring the wood chips up into that that little shed, and then bring it over to this big shed where it would either get dumped here or transferred to here into the main building where it gets processed, and that's where all that, you know, paper stuff happens. Paper magic, whatever they use to do that. And then obviously this is the other part of this kit that comes with it, and I did the same thing. I left the back panel out so I can make some kind of extension to the building, but everything else is pretty much the way it's supposed to be. Some holding tanks there. This is supposed to be the chemicals that they use for the paper making process. So this allows 4 tank cars to be delivered there, and there's a loading bridge there with the pumps and everything, and that's a Shapeways little kit there, which is, I'm really happy with. There's an access road obviously to get in and out of this area, this industrial area, and then there's a furniture company on this side that gives you access to well, it gives 2 tracks that can be either you know, lumber that's unloaded by this forklift here, or the boxcar that's in there is for loading the finished furniture into the boxcar, or the trucks can pull up and load from there as well. Furniture company there, and then this is a transfer building or a warehouse for any, you know, any products that need to be pulled in temporarily and then switched into another car or other situation. Also scratch built that. I'm happy with how that came out, and there's a video specifically on that building which you can watch on my channel. Once again, I haven't paid attention to this train, and it's moving very nicely through. Not even not even worried about it derailing or anything like that, which is outstanding. The last thing I forgot to tell you about is this corner, which is a real mess right now, but eventually it will not be. It's just that this is the only piece of benchwork that I have not, you know, started construction on. So I had to put everything here as I'm working. You know, everything seems to land here since I can't put it anywhere else. And yes, people have suggested, you know, other situations under where I can put things, or a cart, but I don't know. I just don't have the patience for that. So I'm just leaving it like that. And I probably should get a cart, but I probably make that messy anyway. This is going to be a coal facility. The coal facility obviously is going to receive a ton of coal cars, or produce a ton of coal cars to be picked up. So I did not have enough room here for that kind of storage. So what I did is I rented, theoretically, through this track, I rented some trackage from the yard. So what I imagine is that this used to be the actual coal facility. That's why there's an old coal tower there for a steam engine, and the hoppers that would drop off the coal there, and, you know, get lifted through the elevator into the holding tower. And then I don't have the chute in place, but there used to be a chute here that would then, you know, spill all the, or you know, push all the coal onto the tender for the steam locomotives. So these 2 tracks are rented space, rented trackage for coal cars. They can store there temporarily, and it could also be used to run around and, you know, either push the cars into the facility, or, you know, just to get on the other side of the train as need be. The other nice thing is that it connects to these tracks, which are the, you know, arrival departure. So if these tracks are already occupied and there still needs to be some kind of switching, it could be accessed this way and connect back there for that. So that's that. Again, just, you know, if you watch other videos on this area, you'll have more detailed information about that. So the only other connecting point that I have not got into is this side here. Now again, my room is very awkward. It's got all these ins and outs and things, and everything's in the way. So the only solution I found, since this room is not going to be used for anything except trains right now for another 3 or 4 years, is to go into the closet here in this situation. So the tracks all go, the 3 tracks meaning the two main lines and the short line go into the closet. I'll just show you how that works. There's the closet here. So the tracks are, that's where they come out. Oh, let's try to get some lighting in here. And they come through on this bridge and spit out this side on this wall. So the nice thing is, like, I can still use the closet. Obviously, I'm using it for storage, and if I wanted to put any kind of clothing here, I could still hang it. It's, the only thing I'm going to build is a little like plexiglass encasing, so that if a coat pushes up against it, it's not going to knock any trains over. And eventually, I might even do a little staging back here somehow, but I don't really need that right now anyway. So as the train comes through, this is a lift-out bridge that it also has scenery on it. So the scenery is actually just this part, and that whole thing slides out and can be stored. And then the lift-out bridge is actually very thin. It's just this, which has a very easy mechanism to release. It's just these are the plugs. It's just one plug that gets you all the power, and then you basically just have these latches. And obviously, the same thing is repeated on this side, and then the whole bridge just pops up. I can just pull it up and hang it on those two pins right there. This is the part that people usually are a little bit surprised with. This area here is actually a shower. It's one of those stand-up showers. The shower is very poorly constructed. When I bought the house, it was already here. And it's got problems where if you use it for more than 5 minutes, it leaks into the ceiling downstairs. So it basically hasn't been used since we bought the house. And eventually, this whole thing's gonna get gutted anyway. So since we're not using it, and it's more like a storage closet, I went ahead and just cut a hole through it. And it pushes the trains past it, so I don't have to bring the tracks around and make this very, very tight. And so it goes through and then spits out on this side here, which is back to the harbor scene, which is what I showed you before. And that's basically a lower level. That's the entire lower level and all the parts. Now let's get to the upper level. I'm gonna start the upper level tour basically by the harbor, but on the upper part, obviously. This harbor is going to be basically copied onto here. Obviously, all the water effects and everything are going to be up here, but it's not going to be as involved as the bottom one. The bottom one is more for the oil tankers and all that stuff. This is just going to be simply for ferry and very basic deliveries. So there's going to be some holding tracks back there, and this is the loading and unloading system that connects to the main right there. So the train that's coming through right now, as you can see, there's a hole in the wall there. That room is the bathroom because, like I said, there's a shower back there, so you could imagine that there is an entire bathroom back there. But I had no room to make a loop to turn the train around, so I had to go into the bathroom and make a detachable loop, which I'll get to in a little while and show you how that works. But let's just take you around. The main is basically one main line. It's supposed to be like a short line, and it comes around, and I absolutely love how this came out because it's supposed to be like the middle of nowhere, but I like that it has these tunnels of trees, kind of like what you would see in like Pennsylvania or heavily wooded areas. And I just love sitting here and watching the train come through this maze, this little S-curve of trees and vegetation, and there's like a bridge that pops up suddenly here. Nice rusty bridge with a dried up creek here, mud and stuff. And then it continues through, and the hills, the hills kind of let the train kind of disappear for a little bit. And it just, that whole thing continues, so it makes it look very far, like there's a lot of distance there. And then suddenly it spits out here into a little facility. It's not anything too intrusive, but it's got a little spur and just two holding tracks here. And I have no idea what this little facility is going to be. It might just be like a little transfer house or something, but I'll figure it out. And there's a little access road here for the trucks and stuff to come in. And the fencing I haven't finished, and that forklift obviously I haven't finished. But yeah, it's a nice little facility. Now, as the train comes around, this is the same concept where I wanted some kind of block, like some kind of scene block. So instead of making another mountain, which I was like, well, that's just gonna look too repetitive, I just went with heavy forest. So a lot of trees, a lot of trees. Very dense, but you still could barely see the train making the turn here. And again, I wanted to be able to stand on this side of the layout and not know that this train's gonna go, you know, obviously around to the other side of the wall. And that's why I just love the way that came out. But just at a glance here, I just love this area here. It's just such a nice little scene. And you know, again, there's great opportunity here for nice photos and nice videos, which I love. Okay, I'm gonna take you around the bend here. This is the end of the peninsula, obviously. And then once you get past that scene block, it puts you in a very industrial looking situation here. This is a cement and gravel facility with your typical gravel and cement buildings that everybody has. But I wanted to combine them and then just add a few more elevators and things in the back to make it look a little bit bigger. So I went with that. And so there's 3 tracks. 2 are for, you know, loading and unloading, and then 1 is for holding back here. And this locomotive is supposed to be designated just for switching out this facility, but also to switch out the gravel elevator, the grain elevators, which are all the way on the other side of this. Now, I always wanted just long stretch of straight track with a grain elevator. I keep saying that, a grain elevator on its side, and it just kind of zooms around it and past it. And I just love the way that looks. It makes it look so far away. So that's what I did here. This is the spur that allows you access to both facilities. So basically it's a siding, but it's kind of lifted. It's a little higher than the other track. And it's also a little bit detached because I wanted to be able to run this train here on the main line at high speeds and not have to worry about that track being on top of it. So I pushed it out a little bit just to create a little space. So yeah, basically it's going to be a siding that goes all the way through. So there'll be long grain trains here, and that would put you also into the you know, loading shed here. The other track next to it is just to hold either loaded or unloaded cars that need to be switched here. So again, that locomotive that I showed you before is the one that's in charge. So a grain train can come here and just drop off a tremendous line of tremendous string of grain cars, and then go on its way with other, you know, with more grain cars, whatever it has, and then the locomotive here locally can switch all that stuff out. The backdrop that you see here, I'm not sure I'm going to keep. I like it, but I have to kind of play around with it a little bit because the only thing I don't like is that the grassy area in the photograph is not matching necessarily what I did here with the dirt and stuff. So I have 2 options. Either I'm going to modify the dirt to make it look more like the grass on the paper, or I'm going to try to get a photo backdrop that matches more what I have done already here. I think the first approach is probably easier because I don't have to, you know, I don't have to worry about getting a whole nother photo backdrop, which I'm not even going to be sure what it looks like until I put it in place, because you know, you can never tell from computer screen what it's really going to look like. So that's what this is all about. I like to put my backdrop up for a while so I can kind of absorb them and see if I like it before I permanently attach them. The other thing I might do is cut a little bit of the bottom off to lower it, because it's looking a little bit HO-y with The structure's being a little too high, but then again, when you look at it from here, I mean, it looks like it's just continuing back, and that, that there's just depth. So obviously, the eye plays a trick on you. When you look at it this way, it looks like it's going in. But when you look at it this way, you can see obviously that it's, it's not. It's just going straight up. So your brain automatically adjusts and focuses on the depth. And it tries to fix it, basically. But whatever. I don't have a lot of space here. Obviously, there's like maybe a foot here. And so I had to make it look like it's steep, even though it's not. That's all I could do there. All right, so that brings us around. This is very simple up here. And then the siding connects right at that point there. And then there's a spur right there. Sorry, I'm trying to stretch over here. I can't really control the camera. That spur is going to come out and onto this platform here, which is the last area that I have in mind as far as building track. And this is going to be like some kind of tank facility. So I don't know what they're going to develop, what they're going to produce there. If it's going to be corn syrup or some kind of chemical or whatever. But that's going to deliver a few tank cars. I can't make it too complicated because it's kind of hard to reach from this spot up to there. So the switches are going to definitely be automated. I'm not going to start jumping up there with a stool and trying to do it all manually. But it's got to be simple enough where I could just quickly, latch and grab the next set of cars. So that brings me basically to the last thing, which is that turnaround loop that I never showed you in the bathroom. So I'm going to walk you around, and I'm going to meet you there at the bathroom. One last thing before I let you go here. Notice that this train has also been running by itself. I'm just letting that go, and along with the coal train that's still running down there. So again, I just love that I can have these trains running and not worry about them, and still run a third train or even a fourth train if I need to, in a way where it makes things a lot more interesting. Okay, I'll see you on the other side. Now we're standing on the other side of the room, which is basically the hallway. This is the lift-out bridge that I showed you before, and this is the shower. And now in the bathroom, which is absolutely dated because, it hasn't been touched since forever. What I did is I took some 2-inch foam, this insulation foam, and built a loop. And the loop goes through the wall where the vanity is. Now that vanity slides right out. So I'm able to replace it once, this just pops out. This whole thing just pops off, and I can store it in the other room, and then the vanity just pops in, and you could never tell if there was a train coming through the wall at any point. So the way I built this was basically I put a mounting system here so that it would be at the same level as the track coming from the other side of the room, and then I added another one of these latches here to just kind of hold it in place. Now it's not perfect, but it's very close. And then what I did is I put re-railers here and I cut them. So the re-railers are, serving two purposes here. One is to keep the train railed on track, so to speak. And the other purpose is that it allows me more strength in the track, so they don't move around, from left to right, because even though you glue them, they still have a little movement. So it's a bigger surface area to glue with than just the ties from the flex track or whatever it is. It just helps keep things more aligned. And then what I did to keep this thing afloat here is I bought these collapsible mounts. And the reason I bought them collapsible is because I want them to, when I'm not using this, to just basically go flush against the wall here. So all of these come down. There's two there, there's one there. And I had one there, but I had to fix the height. I don't really need it, but the height is a little too high and it's pushing the track up too high. But that's what they look like when they're tucked away. So it's not, an eyesore when you're in here. I mean, the rest of the bathroom is an eyesore with, pink toilets and stuff. But this is how the train makes its way around. And it's a long enough loop that it allows you to feel like the train went to another destination, meaning even this long train, which I would say is probably 30 cars, is able to fit entirely in this room. It disappears from this line of sight in the layout room, and then by the time it makes it around this very long loop, when it enters again, you kind of forget that it was there. So it feels like there's a new train coming in, rather than seeing the caboose on one side and then the engine kissing the caboose on the other side, coming in the opposite direction. I think that just looks a little toyish. So I'm trying to make it as realistic as I possibly can. Not that it's a super outstanding job, but I'm trying. So I'm gonna just show you real quick. This is like the end of the train here. It's coming through the entrance after the cement cars there. We got the caboose, and see, the engine is nowhere near in sight yet. So now the train at that point has completely disappeared from the sight line on the other side of the layout room, and that gives it enough time for the brain to be like, oh, that train went away. And you can see still, you haven't seen a locomotive yet. So that's like the clock ticking away, and now the locomotive is starting to get there and make itself visible as it enters the room one more time. Let me just show you how that goes over the tracks there. So you can see it's very smooth. Very, very smooth. And there it is. So again, when I'm done with my operation, oh, I forgot to tell you one more thing. The way I get power to this track, since I have to detach the whole thing, is through a speaker wire, basically. So this is one of those RCA wires, and I just made a little plate there with an RCA plug. And if you know how RCA wires work, it's basically there's a pin which has like the positive, and there's a shell which has a negative. So it's just basically two wires in one. So it's so easy because I can just pull it out and I'm done, or plug it in when I get ready to do things here. And then that wire just goes into the foam board and right to the track, right there. Now I got to clean that up a little bit, but that's basically the gist of it. And then I put some wood here to stabilize the foam a little bit, because foam is not extremely rigid, so I needed some kind of like very stiff surface to keep the tracks in place. And I also did it on top here, so I basically sandwiched it to make it really stiff, and that's why it's able to very smoothly make its way through there. So I'm going to let you go there. It's basically all of my layout thus far. It's almost June 2019, and I'm very happy with the way this layout is coming along. Unfortunately, this is going to come to an end, like many layouts do, in a few years. I would say in about 3 or 4 years. And I am going to move a lot of this stuff into the basement, because what we're trying to do is finish the basement, move the stuff in, and then gut the upstairs and redo the upstairs when we have the finances up. So there are my two trains coming through, and if you'd like to see more of my videos, both on the layout and other things that I have as far as instructional videos and things like that, check out my YouTube channel, Rhythm Railroad on YouTube, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.